Good afternoon, and welcome to our third solid waste session, International Case Studies. I'm Ruth Abbey from Zero Waste USA, and I will be introducing each of the speakers. Our first speaker is Jamie Kaminsky from Zero Waste Canada. Jamie is a zero waste practitioner and advises businesses and institutions throughout Canada in the practical programs towards zero waste. He works with his fellow policy advisors to create strong, practical, and enforceable policies that drive change towards zero waste, and is a member of the board of directors on both Zero Waste Canada and the Zero Waste International Alliance.
Before we begin, I would first like to take this opportunity to acknowledge that this presentation was recorded from the city of Port Coquitlam, which is the unceded traditional and ancestral territories of Coquitlam First Nation, which lies within the shared territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, Musqueam, Squamish, and Stolo nations. For those of you who are logged in from other countries around the world, the purpose of these statements is to show respect for Indigenous peoples and recognize their enduring relationship to the land. This is especially dear to us given all the natural beauty that surrounds us here in Canada. My name is Jamie Kaminsky, and I am a board member of the Zero Waste International Alliance, which is a decentralized organization that develops and advocates for zero waste policies, principles, education, and programs. I'm also a board member of Zero Waste Canada, which is the Canadian national affiliate of the Zero Waste International Alliance, with the mandate of developing, expanding, and implementing the Alliance's work in Canada. And lastly, I am the president of HSR Zero Waste, which is a social enterprise dedicated to offering zero waste and resource management services and training. Throughout this conference, you will hear about two key policies developed by the Zero Waste International Alliance, including the zero waste definition and the zero waste hierarchy. During this presentation, we will be going over the following decision-making principles of the zero waste hierarchy and specifically how they are being applied in different organizations in Canada. Facilitate change in how end users' needs are met from ownership of goods to shared goods and provision of services. This decision-making principle is based on communities making the most of and sharing what they already have, which are key principles of zero waste. One example of this principle in practice at the service level comes from cup or mug sharing programs, which there are growing examples of in different parts of the world. The Nulla Project represents one Canadian approach focusing on reducing the wastefulness of the common daily North American practice of take-out coffee and the disposable coffee cup. Participation in the Nulla Project begins with a $5 deposit to have access to a reusable mug. Users may then enjoy their beverage waste-free. After they have consumed their beverage, they are free to return the reusable mug to a participating location to either exchange it for a freshly washed mug or to get a refund for returning the mug and allowing it to be washed and put back into circulation for others to use. These models are designed around the concept of shared ownership. Rather than everyone needing to go out and purchase their own brand new reusable mug, they can make the most of what is already in circulation within their community by instead participating in a sharing program. One example of this decision-making principle in practice at the community level comes from libraries. Libraries represent our most established forms of sharing resources within a community by providing books which the public may rent and then return for subsequent use on behalf of other community members. Libraries are increasingly providing value in the sharing of a variety of different resources, beginning with audiobooks and videos such as films to items like common household tools for rent. The Vancouver Public Library, as an example, provides musical instruments for rent as well as public computers. These represent valuable opportunities for those who may not have the same level of access to such resources as others. These community spaces are also used to share knowledge via classes, workshops, and a variety of other services. Shared spaces such as meeting, study, or conference rooms represent community spaces which are often undervalued and often underutilized. Opportunities in this area are widespread. Communities are filled with opportunities to make the most of the already existing resources within those communities. Shifting the conventional concept and understanding of ownership increasingly towards that of shared resources is an important step in communities making the most of what they already have. These concepts may in addition equally apply within business settings and the environment. Applying this principle in practice directly applies the guiding principle of closed-loop systems and engage the community. Identify and phase out materials that cause problems for closed-loop systems. This principle in practice can be observed at Zero Waste Emporium, package-free grocery stores, and grocery stores that focus on reusable and refillable packaging such as Zero Waste Emporium are growing around the world. These stores represent a one-stop grocery location for communities which seek to phase out packaging and which visibly prioritize materials which do not create further problems for closed-loop systems. An obvious type of material being avoided in these locations is conventional plastics, for the reasons covered in the Zero Waste Fundamentals program. Part of the mission of these types of facilities and business models is to help broaden public awareness regarding the possibilities that exist beyond these materials and systems of take, make, waste, which create the many challenges we face in our environment. As a consumer looking to phase out single-use packaging, or in some instances, packaging altogether, these stores are pinnacle because they can be very effective at providing consumer feedback in order to influence how products are manufactured, packaged, and sold. As these stores become more popular, they will gain more purchasing power, which will in turn influence more manufacturers to manufacture and package based on their feedback. Implement sustainable purchasing that supports social and environmental objectives as well as local markets. This decision-making principle is based on the understanding that zero waste incorporates multiple values and concurrent objectives beyond just waste reduction, as we all now know. One example of this principle in practice at the facility or business level comes from the soap dispensary and kitchen staples. While initially focusing solely on soaps, cleaners, and personal care products, the soap dispensary expanded to also provide food in response to community demand, developing into a full-on, one-stop, zero-waste shop for everyday household items found in more conventional grocery stores. The soap dispensary and kitchen staples business model is centered around their social and environmental objectives, which consist of the following practices and principles. First and foremost, they adhere to their core concept of products offered in bulk and packaging free. No single-use containers may be found within this space in order to meet its core objective of waste reduction. The additional advantage of bulk from a waste reduction perspective is that both the store and its customers may order the amount of product that they need, no less, no more. This flexibility allows for appropriate planning for consumption and purchase of perishables to minimize discards due to spoilage and non-consumption. In addition to bulk and packaging free, the soap dispensary prioritizes the purchasing of products which support organic agriculture. They purchase cruelty-free personal care and beauty products, ensuring they are not participating in animal testing. They dedicate resources to the sourcing of vegan alternatives, which fully align with the principles and practices of zero waste, and they source products that are made from natural ingredients with no toxins. All of this is made easier with the goal of purchasing local, from producers they know, trust, and have the ability to interact with directly. Purchasing from local suppliers makes being transparent easier and is closely tied to the waste reduction component of their business model. Because the zero waste aspect is not only being offered to customers walking in, but is equally being pursued with suppliers on the back end, behind the scenes. Choose products that maximize the usable lifespan and opportunities for continuous reuse. This decision-making principle is based on the act of planning for reuse. One example of this principle in practice at the facility level takes us back to Ernest Ice Cream. In addition to its seasonal flavors and working in small batches, Ernest represents an example of introducing products and systems as part of its business model that maximize the usable lifespan of products and create opportunities for continuous reuse. Ernest's most obvious zero waste initiative was the introduction of its returnable jar system for its ice cream pints. Rather than distribute single-use containers for its ice cream pints, which represents the industry standard, Ernest distributes its ice cream in glass pints, which customers pay an additional dollar deposit at point of purchase. Customers may then return the jar for a refund or to receive a discount on the purchase of another pint. Once returned, these pints are washed and refilled with more product to be sold, for the process to begin all over again. In its continued zero waste efforts, Ernest, in addition, offers its customers metal spoons for sampling its flavors, to be used once by the customers, but then washed and subsequently utilized over and over, again going beyond the industry standard of disposable tasting spoons. Ernest extends this mindset equally behind the scenes with the equipment used to transport pints and other materials to its multiple locations, including its third-party vendors, and also to recover returned pints for reuse. Once more, introducing reusable equipment such as metal cages as opposed to the industry standard of using disposable cardboard boxes wrapped on pallets with plastic shrink wrap. Doing this avoids the use of pallets which frequently break and end up being discarded along with the cardboard boxes and pallet wrap. These examples represent everyday situations for facilities where conscious efforts have been made to maximize practices of reuse. Everyday decision-making moments where zero waste alternatives may be explored and implemented. This, however, requires a conscious effort to overcome the mental barriers we have and which are most often imposed by industry standards or conventional norms, which, as this one example of Ernest helps convey, may be challenged and overcome where there is a conscious effort and desire to do so. Prioritize the use of edible food for people. This decision-making principle is based on the concept of highest and best use for organic resources. One example of this principle in practice at the facility or business level takes us back to Nata Grocery. In addition to the supply chain transparency it offers its customers, Nata distinguishes itself also for its use of organic resources within its facility. Nata does not represent a typical grocery store because it offers bulk, packaging-free products to its customers without resorting to single-use items. Another way Nata differentiates itself from a typical grocery store is with its on-site zero-waste cafe. Nata's zero-waste cafe was designed to capture the facility's surplus food, which is primarily made up of perishables sold on-site such as fruits and vegetables. Any produce which remains unsold is therefore being taken by Nana's head chef and repurposed into daily harvest soups, smoothies, salads, sauces, and dips, all of which continue to be sold on site in a different form, yet still quite edible. All of which reduces Nana's output in terms of organic waste to minimal amounts, and results in a reduction of food waste, which remains high in conventional grocery stores who typically do not concern themselves with waste, nor do they tend to prioritize the use of edible food for people. Nada's internal circular loop of organic resources within its own store is just one example of prioritizing the use of edible food for people before resorting to less valuable steps lower down the hierarchy. While composting is a very valuable concept, our greatest form of resource management is still waste reduction. Food which is still suitable for human consumption should always be directed towards human consumption above all other possibilities. Beginning with the following principle, maximize reuse of materials and products. This decision-making principle is based on the concept of making the most of what we already have. One example of this principle in practice at the facility level comes from Chickpea Restaurant. Chickpea's commitment to zero waste is visible across all facility levels of operation. The common denominator for this restaurant's operational efforts is that they are focused in the area of reuse, starting with taking customer orders using tablets, followed by using durable, reusable food service items ranging from cutlery, sauce containers, pitchers for water, containers used to hold food service items, glass straws for cocktails, and finally hand dryers instead of paper towels in the washrooms. All these areas are characterized by their commitment to reuse, which is not the common practice within the industry. This mentality of reuse translates to Chickpea's operations behind the scenes, from the supply of its alcoholic beverages such as wine and beer, down to the equipment utilized for its catering services. A conscious effort to maximize the reuse of materials and products is evident, which again go far beyond industry standards. Within standard restaurant environments, one very common and very significant waste stream is bottles and beverage containers, from glass bottles to aluminum cans and plastic bottles, all of which are virtually non-existent at this restaurant, as alcoholic beverages such as wine and beer are delivered to this location using reusable containers or kegs, ultimately returned for reuse, a cyclical loop which continues over time. These waste streams are not only being eliminated due to Chickpea's decision to opt for a reusable delivery service with suppliers, but also because beverages served on site are made in-house as opposed to being bought pre-made and pre-packaged with single-use packaging. This policy not only allows Chickpea customers to avoid engaging with standard single-use beverage containers as part of their dining experience, but also allows Chickpea to avoid the single-use packaging waste generated behind the scenes across its supply chain, reducing waste throughout the entire system of production and consumption. Chickpea's catering service further extends this mentality beyond the physical limits of the restaurant facility itself by adopting practices of reuse in the delivery and serving of food for external events. This approach represents one example of maximizing the reuse of materials and products, which involves challenging conventional norms and going beyond industry standards. It also, once more, involves balancing multiple values. In this case, balancing this restaurant's zero waste efforts with its vegan menu, community presence, and its conscious effort to support organic agriculture, all of which are operating in alignment with one another. Reuse represents a pivotal stage in terms of decision making for zero waste. By opting in favor of reusable products and systems, we are effectively phasing out single-use products and systems. Reuse allows for the continuous utilization of resources over time without needing to enter the waste management stage at lower levels of the hierarchy. This concludes our session. Thank you for following along. To learn more about the fundamentals of zero waste or to become a zero waste associate, please register for our courses at zerowastecanada.ca/education-training.
Our next speaker will be Paul Martinson. Paul has worked in the environmental and waste management field for 20 years and has been a zero waste advocate for the past 15 years. He is the founder of the Zero Waste Eco Park in Göteborg, Sweden, and he is an international traveler and advocate for zero waste. He is the world ambassador for the Let's Do It World and has participated in cleanups in more than 30 countries. He will give us a tour of zero waste around the world.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to this great conference. My name is Paul Martinson, and I am, like you, an hashtag today. And I've been working for the World Cleanup Day many years, and also for the Zero Waste Movement for more than 15 years. And I want to talk today a little bit about my travels all over the world, more than 100 countries where I've been looking at waste, and I also been looking at really smart solutions and people's enthusiasm to try to get to zero waste. So as you can see, I'm also on the social media and promoting, of course, zero waste on the World Cleanup Day. I've been working for Gothenburg City, Sweden, because I am from Sweden. I've been working for them for about 15 years, and I was in charge of recycle centers, and I also created the world's largest recycle and reusing park, which now is like almost 30 years ago. So let's start and see a little bit about the world tour. You are on board. That is my question. If you are on board for the world tour when it comes to the World Cleanup Day. So I want also to promote worldcleanupday.org, where you can read more about our fantastic cleanups all over the world. We have a million people coming out. And this year it will be 18 September. This is Ben, my grandchild, and that is the reason why I'm actually engaged in zero waste, circular economy, and waste business, because I don't want him to breathe dioxin and furans, and I don't want him to drink fluoride water or eat plastic or swim in toxic oceans. Because zero wasters, we always care about air, soil, oceans, and souls. We are also looking forward for the next generation, our children and grandchildren, of course. And I would like to give Ben a healthy and fresh planet. But as it is now, it seems far away. But if I give up and you give up, what will it be then? So it means we need to do something. And we who are working with environmental questions, we will never be a silent majority. We must speak up and we must show facts, educate, and maybe sometimes provoke, but we never can be silent. Knowledge, understanding, and listening is in our DNA. That's why we always will find solutions that gain you and me, the people, and the planet. This is Zero Waste Europe, which I've been working with many years also, and it just show the map of Europe and all the different organization that is participating in this incredible journey we are in, the journey for going on the zero waste route to zero waste, which will take quite a long time because it is really a journey. And maybe we're not going to go down to zero waste totally, but we're going to be very, very close. So we need to fight incineration and landfill. And Europe is doing really good now. EU is taking more and more into the circular economy and the zero waste way, which we've been talking for about 15 years. So Zero Waste Europe .eu is a good site to take a look at also if you want to read more about the work that's happening in Europe. Zero waste is the future. I am 100% convinced about that. And humans, we are the only species on the planet that don't live by this zero waste principle, because nature is the model and nature don't produce any waste. So zero waste is not just about recovering materials, but it's also about recovering people, the job, the economy. So it's time to get all the politicians and the citizens to work together. We need to move forward together, because zero waste is better for the economy, for the health, for the oceans, the planet, and of course for our children and grandchildren. It is a journey, as I said, and it's a broad church. Everybody has to be on board, and we will be on board, everybody, because you will find out that this is the only smart way to go through and get rid of what we call waste today. This is a picture from Bali. The name of the beach is Dreamland Beach, and this is a typical example what it looks like in many, many beaches throughout the world. Indonesia is one of the worst places because they have so many currents coming to the country from different ocean and seas around and rivers. So it ends up in Indonesia, and they really have a huge problem when this typical plastic tsunami comes up. But they are doing good also because they have legislation coming on now, and they have a lot of cleanup organizations that take care of it, and also municipalities that start to organize a good logistic and a decent waste management system. So what can we do about all this? First of all, from the zero waste point of view, we never accept no burn. No burn means we don't accept incineration. And no bury means that we cannot accept landfill. even if it's better to have everything in a controlled landfill compared to incineration, because incineration is really stupid way to do it, because everybody knows if you burn something, then it's gone. This is a picture from Cambodia, which are Cambodia will host 2022 the Asian Games, which is like the Olympics for Asia. It's a great, great event, and they decided to try to make this a zero waste event. So they start to clean up the rivers and also the shoreline. And the rivers should actually be counted into the shorelands in every country. We're not talking about the ocean beaches, because the rivers is actually also like beach line and coastline, because these big rivers in Asia, they are polluting enormous areas and they are full of waste. So Cambodia is trying to do something about this. This is a picture from Laos. Laos was the most bombed country ever in the world. It was one big bomb falling every 8 minutes during 9 years. And as you can see on the picture, the country looks like a Swiss cheese. People today are still working with bombs and leftovers and scrap that was from the war 40 years ago. And this guy, he's called himself a bomb hunter, so he goes hunting every day for material. And when you don't have any money and you have no opportunity to make any, you will do anything to survive. So this includes that you are risking your life for a few dollars every day, and that's exactly what they are doing. And poor people and waste are very, very much connected, which you also know because we have thousands of people living on different dumps throughout the world. What I did in Cambodia when I came to this little village was that they were melting down all this scrap and metal they found, and they made spoons out of it. So it was not make war, make spoons. So you could buy spoons, and they were selling these spoons, and they were feeding the families, and the tourists were buying them. And it was a great article, to show what you could do of this metal also, instead of doing grenades or lethal weapons. And people were extremely happy. And even if they had relatives that had been killed of these bombs, but it was a great opportunity to be there and see it. This is an example when I was working with one woman in Laos also. We worked for 12 hours. Sakone was her name. She had 4 children to feed. She was a widow. She got for 12 hours work, all the items she collected, she got $3. And we went to this place where the buyer was. He was buying, and you can see they pile up the sacks over there on the weight and weigh it, what kind of, if it was PET bottles or cardboard or glass or whatever it was. He was the one who decided how much to pay for it. And there was about 200 people working with this stuff. They have small trailers like that they were collecting, and walked around the city, collected. And this is something that is all over the world, the informal sector of waste collectors, which are doing a great job for very, very small money. And this is also example down to the left. You can see they are packing the cardboard, and they also collected glass and stuff. And all this stuff from Laos, they was exported into Vietnam, where they had factories where they could take care of them and recycle it. This is in Italian, gentilezza, gera gentilezza. It means that kindness brings kindness. So if you're nice and smile, you will have a smile back. And that is something I learned throughout my travels everywhere in the world. It works perfectly good. And people are normally very, very kind. San Francisco is one of our model cities when it comes to the zero waste thinking. And they've been working very hard, for the waste segregation there. So you can go to San Francisco City webpage and read more about it. And they've been doing great project and have huge composting facilities. And the soil is really popular, especially up in the wine areas in Sonoma. They get out of the food waste, which is separated out of the waste, because that is one of the main thing for zero waste, also get the organics out of the waste. Then you have a much cleaner and better fraction to work with, which doesn't very bad, and bring all the organics for composting. This is an example from Brazil. What is good for you is good for Florianopolis, which is the name of the city. This is a place where people could bring the PET bottles, they could bring the Tetra packs or whatever they had, you know, and leave it here. And they got points, which they put on like a credit card. So you got these points, and from these points you can bring to the shop, and then you can buy stuff for these things in the supermarkets, or you could also buy stuff which was recycled and made from different workshops. You can see a few examples there. There were some T-shirts and some potteries and stuff which was made from the material they bring there. So this was a good system to make some awareness for people. And you can see they're lining up outside. They come with all the items they have, you know, and they leave it there. And they also have a very, very organized system in the big condos, where people have to do the sorting and so on. And then these people from the container, they come and pick it up, you know, and take care of it if people don't bring it themselves. From the north of Spain, in a province called Guipúzcoa, we have a special system where you have hooks. Each household and each flat has their own hook and their own number. And that's where they put the container. This is the day when they are collecting the organics, which is a brown bin. So you hang it there, and then they come with a small truck and they empty everything. So they could see and trace back if something was bad with somebody put something that was not organic and so on. So they had a total control what everybody was throwing into this system, and they could keep track of it. So they have different containers, and then they have a collection schedule which day they're going to hang out this the right color of the container and so on. Seems maybe to be a little bit complicated system, but it worked really, really well, and people were happy about it. Because also when you go down and you hang up your container, you meet some other people and you talk to them. So it was also a little bit socializing. And they also had, behind the big houses, they also all had composting facilities also. And for the really big bulky stuff, they had a special station where you could leave this bigger stuff also. Italy is one of the best countries when it comes to zero waste thinking. More than 300 municipalities have reached more than 70% separation, source separation in just a few years. It goes really, really fast when you start with it, you know. Food waste, for example, was introduced in Milan, which is 1.3 million in the city. In 18 months, they implemented in 4 different steps that took 1/4 of the city each time. And it was mandatory to do the sort separation and get the organics out of the waste. And it was, since it was mandatory, 100% connection with all people. And they had a lot of teams going out, educating, showing people how they should do and so on. And then they had also a follow-up after a few months, you know, and now they have incredible good figure when it comes to clean composting. So it also means that you need to have educational program. You cannot just implement the system and think it runs by itself. It needs to have someone then push it and explain it. And once people have understood the system, they obey it and they think it's a good, smart system. So these are the more than 300 different cities in Italy which have promised to adopt a zero waste system, and they're working hard for it and have fantastic results. You can also buy bulk, of course, which is a good way to do. So this is how you can buy milk. You refill your own bottle in the system out on the street. And also these big bulk shops, which are very common in Italy. This is one called Efficorta, where you can buy all the detergents and shampoo you want, and even you in the middle you see you can also buy wine by bringing your own bottles and refill them, which is of course saving a lot of packaging. Slovenia in Ljubljana is the first capital in the world that declared themselves as a zero waste city, and they've been working together with Zero Waste Europe quite a long time to get all the systems in place. And once they started with it, it worked out really good. So that is also a model city for us to look into if you want to see how they do it in bigger cities. This is an example from my hometown when we made a reusing and recycling park, which was quite a big area, about 30,000 square meters, where we took everything that people were aiming to throw away. We took it and put it into different shops, and sold it and reused it as much as we could. And it turned out to be a great success. And we also been modeled for many other parks and department stores, which has the similar formula. And this is what it looks like when people come to this park. They cannot pass through this service hall we have, because this is where we are talking to everybody. What do you have on your trailer? What do you have in your car? And so on. And then from there, we take out all the different stuff we can and try and ask them to donate it. And then we put it into the different department stores we have, where we are selling only used stuff, Just an example. And the follow-up of this one is another one in also in Sweden, in the middle of Sweden, in a city called Eskilstuna, which is a huge place where they only sell secondhand stuff, where people donate there, and it became a great success. You can see it's full of people, and they also have a lot of repair shops and fix-it clinics and so on, so people can really prolong the life of the products they have, because that is a big problem today, to repair things, because everything is so melted into plastic, so it's almost impossible to open and repair stuff. But on these fixed clinics and repair centers, you can leave it and they can do it for you. This is from Vietnam, and if the city decide to put up a system, it should include everybody. So this is just an example that even if you're living on the coastline and you don't have any road, they come with a boat and they bring the bins there, and the idea was that everybody should be included in the system, no matter where you stayed. And they really worked hard for it, and it was fantastic to see when they came with this sea area where people were living far out, and they got the bin, so they could start putting the waste there instead of throwing it into the river. Philippines, where I've been living a couple of years, really interesting country also, with of course an enormous problem with waste, but they have actually a legislation which says that they have legislation against incineration, more or less. It's not allowed to burn the waste and so on. And they also have the plastic bag free day. They have a lot of zero waste programs. They have active educational programs in the school, and they have a few cities that are really, really model cities, how they're doing it. They actually collect waste every day. And the motto is no segregation if they have no pickup. If they don't segregate it, then they don't pick it up. So it means that everybody is segregated. And they also have what they call the MRF, which is material recovery facilities. Should be in all small the villages should have one. And then in this MRF, they only accept clean and segregated waste. And they have more than 10,000 of these MRFs all over the country. And this is example what it looks like, you know, where you put the different stuff you have, if it's glass or metal or plastic, organics and so on, separated into different areas and only clean and segregated waste. This is another example. You can see where they put up the different stuff into different cages. And this is also where they put the compost, and then they have a gardening, and people can easily see that the food waste becomes soil, and you can grow new stuff on it also. So this is also like educational center. This is transforming the community. This is from Manila, which shows a place that looks terrible, you know, and the people decided we need to do something about this. The municipality had put out some bins there, but you can see it looks terrible. But they took care of everything, and they went together, a group of people, and start thinking in a more circular and a more zero waste thinking. And today it is the eco park where they are selling plants, and they are also selling different zero waste things, and they also promote the zero waste living. So it means when people get together, it's an enormous force and power in this, and we can do miracles. And that is just what happened here, I would say. It was incredible to see the transformation of this one. And also you can use all these different residuals we have, you know, you can pulverize it, and you can mix it, and you can make tiles out of it. In you know, there are so many different ideas of how you can take care of a different kind of waste. This is a glass machine with crossing the glass, and you can use the glass to make tiles also. And there is also a little machine here which is melting down all the styrofoam, which is a huge problem, but you melt it down in a very energy effective machine, and it comes out like bricks. And then you can just, they sell it, and it can be recycled in a more proper way. And of course, also if you think about the transportation, about styrofoam, which almost is air. So if you do these bricks and pellets, it's much better and effective to take care of it in a more proper way. This is actually from Canada. Gibson Recycling is called, run by a zero waster called Buddy Boyd. We also have trash for cash markets where people can go and they can bring different kind of trash. This is also to visualize for people that cardboard and PET bottles and all this stuff has a value. So you can leave it there and you get paid for it, or you can get coupons, or you can buy, or you can change the waste for something else. So this is a big market in outside of Manila where they do this, and they also take care of hazardous stuff that which should not be in the loop, of course, batteries and stuff like that, and bulbs. India has done a tremendous job. This is from Poon's area where they had waste pickers. They went from be very, very low status people to raise up to have some kind of dignity and respect, because they got organized in a formal system, and they had promoting source separation, door-to-door collection, and they got organized in a union, and it was mainly women working there. And they gradually changed the people's attitude, not only for waste, but also to themselves. You know, as waste pickers, they had quite a low standard, but as soon as people understood that these people are working for a better planet, they're working for the environment, the the dignity and the respect raised also for them. So that was a great happening, you know, what it happened there. And even if you are crippled and can hardly move, you can work. And this guy's job is to watch the guy who left the recyclables there and say, "You watch this. I have to do something else." So he was sitting there guarding it. This is from Ecuador, a dump in Ecuador where a guy, he built a washing machine. And what did he wash in his washing machine? Plastic. He washed all the plastic because it should be clean, and then he dried it out and baled it and sell it. This is a picture from Hawaii, which is a thrift store and a recycle center also where people could leave stuff. So they made a little shop there and a little cafe with a beautiful view over the Pacific Ocean, and a very popular place. This is from St. Petersburg in Russia, where the truck couldn't go in between the houses. They created this bike where they put the bin, and you could bike there and you could go and collect the waste in the most dark and narrow areas you could think about. So this was just a solution also to make it easier for people to get rid of the waste, and a smart solution, of course. This is a sign from Kigali in Africa. It is more than 10 years ago I took this picture, and they said you're not allowed to bring in the plastic bags into our country. That was, now it's plastic bag bans in many places all over the world, but this was more than 10 years ago, and I was really confused, and I said, why is it like this? Why is sign like this? And the answer was very easy: because we can't handle it in our country. And that is actually one of the main principles in the zero waste thinking, that you should not put anything into the loop that we can't take care of, because then we have a problem. And this is what they understood. Don't bring the plastic back into our country because we cannot take care of them, then we will have a problem. So they say, no, thank you, we don't want it. And that's why we also say that the most important R in the zero waste movement is the redesign R, because if we can take care of a product, it should be redesigned so we can take care of it if we put it in the loop. So redesign, that is the message we send to the producers. We cannot handle this product, so you have to redesign it to a better product so we can take care of it. This is from Malaysia, even if it says Indonesia, but this city called Kuching is in Malaysia. They created something they call CBS, clean, beautiful, and safe. That's what they should do with the country within 4 years between 2013 and 17. So clean means that they should have clean land, clean water, clean air. So that was about the waste management. Don't throw any stuff into the rivers and take care of all the waste and so on. Beautiful means that they should have a good urban planning. They should have control of the land use, how it works. And they should also have a sense of structure and order. And people could go into parks and stuff and enjoy a beautiful area with a lot of greeneries and so on. And the safe comes to, it should be city road and infrastructure. There should be safe roads, and they should have, of course, no problems with vandalism and theft and burglary and all that stuff. People should feel safe wherever you go in this city. And also we should have a safe food consumption. So this was a really incredible project they put up, you know. And when you were in Kuching, you could really sense this, that there was someone who had control of these things, you know. It was clean, beautiful, safe, and people were extremely happy there. This is an example from Beijing, where you can put a PET bottle and then you get the tickets to go on the underground. These kind of machines are in many places in Europe. In Spain, I saw one, you know, where you put the PET bottle and then you got dog food, so you could feed the dogs. And there are many variants of this one. And it's a good example also to give this PET bottle a value. It means if you deposit here, you get something. And we have also in Europe a lot of deposit system, which people really like, because the good thing with the deposit system is it's instant reward. You put the bottle in and you get points or money immediately. And that is what we really love as humans. This is from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. People were throwing the waste straight out from the house. So they were more or less living in a dump. And this is what we from the World Cleanup Day say, we have to cure this, because we call it trash blindness. People don't see the trash anymore because they're so used to live in it. So this is something, if we do a cleanup there and we tell people this is the way it should be, and they make understand, of course, we should not live like this. We should take care of our waste in a different way. And then they can also put pressure on the municipality and say, we need a waste management system here. We cannot have it like this. So we need to cure this, what we call the trash blindness. So why are cleanups important? Yes, because it raises some kind of awareness, and it helps people to take responsibility. And it also reduces, of course, the amount of waste pollution that is reach the oceans, for example, where people are throwing it into the ocean. And it's also bring up the waste problem into people's mind, you know, when they start touching the waste and they see that they can sort it into different fractions, and they start to understand how the system works. So by participating in a World Cleanup Day, you raise people's awareness a little bit, and they start to understand how it works, and they start to understand that we need to have a chain that works all the way, and we need to have a waste management system, we need to have a logistic system, and so on. We cannot just do a cleanup and then leave it there. We need to take care of it, and we need to take care of the bags we have collected, and we have to see what's inside, which are the valuables, which are the recyclables, and so on. And then, of course, it's really fun to do this, and it's easy. And you are doing it together, maybe not this year because we have individual cleanups, but otherwise we can have 200, 300 people roaming on a beach, clean the whole beach in a couple of hours. And incredible to see the immediate result of what you have been doing, and people really feel proud about what they have been doing. So it's fun to do it also, and it's very easy to organize it. So if you go to the worldcleanupday.org, you can download all the materials you need there, and all the graphic profiles and whatever you need. It's an open network, so everything is for free there. So total recycling is a big vision. It means that we are wasting nothing. And it also means that wasting and attitudes that permit waste are unacceptable. Waste is a proof that something is wrong in the society. It is a true evidence. You can try to burn it and you can try to bury it, but it is evidence still that we are not living in a sustainable society. Waste means that something is wrong. The product is made wrong. So we need to redesign this. As I said, the redesign is important. So that product that is produced should fit in to a modern sustainable world, to a municipality that easily can take care of it. So we have to take care of the waste in one way or another. And finally, there will be no waste because we are smart and we are doing a production that is better. So to have a basic zero waste work program, curbside collection is very good. Include that we have the organics separated. Waste prevention is incredibly important, that we do try to do as much waste prevention as possible. You know, pay as you throw, it means you pay per kilo how much you throw away. It means you try to have less waste because that will be cheaper for you. Money talks, as you know. And we need to check the composition of the residual waste. We have to have redesigned collecting. We have to feed back to the producers and so on what's happening with it. But If you go to Zero Waste Europe's homepage, you will have a lot of material, which also is free to download, where you can see how we work with villages, we work with big cities, we work with different communities all over the world, and we work with businesses, and we have certification programs and so on. So it is a system that works, and Zero Waste is, as I said, the only solution. So whose responsibility is this when we find in the Amazon River, we find all this stuff when I was there, the shoreline was full of it. The responsibility is, of course, ours. We want to throw them, but there is no a way. It's always someone else's backyard. This is something you have to think about. There is no a way because somebody has to pay for it in one way or another. And democracy is not a spectator sport. The future is ours, but only if we actively participate in it and shape in it. You cannot think that, okay, I don't do it, somebody else will do it. Because if you don't do it and I don't do it, who's going to do it? So it means you have to participate. That is something what we call democracy. So if you're not for zero waste, how much waste are you for? Ask yourself that question. We want to save the earth. This is from Rio 20 plus. And this is actually a guy from India. You can see it says India down in the left corner. He said, I want to save the earth. It starts with you. Exactly. And then we have the opposite. I want you to spend a lot to prove that you love your family. No, you should not spend a lot. You should not consume a lot. Be careful. Take it easy. Think, what is the end of life of this product? How can I take care of it? Is it a good product? And first of all, do I need it? Do I need another pair of shoes? Do I need another t-shirt? And so on and so on. So zero waste start changing people's mind a little bit also. They get more awareness, and they get a little bit more careful what they spend and how they consume, which is very good, of course. And to all the young people out there, today everybody is about download an app and everything will be fixed. But in this case, when it comes to nature and the global future and the greener planet and so on, there is no app you can download. Somebody has to do the job, and that's you and me. Yeah, thank you very much for listening to this, and I hope you got some inspiration, and we're going to have some questions and answers also where you can participate, and then I can explain to you if there is an answer, if there are some questions that you want to give me. And I would also finish and end up this presentation with saying that go to worldcleanupday.org or go to zerowasteeurope.eu, read more about the zero waste thinking and how it works, and you will see tremendous examples throughout the world where people are smart and they have smart local solutions, because that's what is important, that we have local solutions in the neighborhood where we are living. We cannot always think about these big solutions and global solutions. It has to start with you and me where we are. Try to clean up my neighborhood, my yard, outside my house, my shoreline, and so on. That gives effect, and everybody counts. Every little step we do is important, and never give up. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker will be Gary Liss. Gary has worked in recycling for over 45 years and is a lead advocate for zero waste. He is a founder and president of the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council and vice president for Zero Waste USA. And he will share his insights on zero waste businesses and communities.
I'm Gary Liss. I'm going to be talking about zero waste communities and businesses in the United States. This is a map of communities around the United States that either have adopted zero waste plans, zero waste resolutions, or signed on to an organization effort by the United Nations called the Urban Environmental Accords back in 2005 that included zero waste by 2040 as one of the accords. So this highlights over 100 communities all over the United States that have adopted zero waste in one way or another. And in the presentation, when you see it, hidden are some slides that give the actual names of the different communities that are listed on this map. The communities are large communities, small communities, urban areas, rural areas, suburban areas. In California, we have over 30 communities that have adopted zero waste. All the major cities on the East Coast have adopted it. Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Atlanta. So that's a major development over the last several years. On the West Coast, the leading cities in California, all the major cities have adopted zero waste as a goal. The city of Seattle has adopted it as a goal as well. So around the country, zero waste has been embraced. Communities are pursuing zero waste in different ways. In Texas, we have several major cities, Austin, Dallas, and San Antonio. In Colorado, Telluride, Fort Collins, Boulder City and County, and just recently Broomfield in Colorado is pursuing zero waste. In California, we were pursuing zero waste since 1997 when the California Resource Recovery Association held its first conference on zero waste in Monterey. That was the first time a conference in the United States had been held, and the California Resource Recovery Association, CRRA.com, has been pursuing, advocating zero waste ever since in one way or another. As a result, communities around the state have embraced the goal. Some of the early leaders were San Luis Obispo County and Del Norte County, two rural areas of the state with progressive staff in both of those organizations. All the major cities, everyone from Oakland to San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, San Jose, have adopted zero waste as a goal and have all developed plans or roadmaps for how to achieve that. San Diego was the most recent large city in California to adopt zero waste as a goal and develop a plan in 2015. So we have all the major cities working towards this throughout the state. Palo Alto was one of the early leaders as well. They just recently, about a year ago, did an update of their zero waste plan that they had adopted in 2005, so that they had already achieved over 80% waste diversion in the city of Palo Alto. And in their update, they were looking at how to get over 90%, which is the measure of performance to be recognized as a zero waste community by the Zero Waste International Alliance. Each of these cities, again, are urban, rural, suburban, northern, southern California, all over the state. We have zero waste moving forward in various ways and in different forms, but they are pursuing zero waste throughout California, and in the United States, California is the furthest ahead of communities pursuing zero waste. At the bottom of the slide is a link at CalRecycle, the state recycling organization that has compiled links to websites for each of the zero waste communities that they have on their website, and that be a great place to go for additional information about each of these communities. We find that why these communities are moving towards zero waste is because of a variety of reasons. The most foremost is reducing climate change. The huge connections between wasting and climate change have been well documented by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and it's a major driver for communities. Those communities in 2005 that signed the Urban Environmental Accords to proactively address climate change found that zero waste was one of the things that they could do at the local level. And it was actually something they could do relatively quickly and with great impact. So the communities that adopted the Urban Environmental Accords have been the ones who were at the forefront of pursuing zero waste and zero waste plans around the country. Since those early days, we find that communities that have adopted climate action plans, sustainability plans, resiliency plans, and any even comprehensive general plans that include one or two sentences in those plans to say we support zero waste and should develop a zero waste plan to figure out how to get there, has been one of the shortcuts that communities have found, that by advocating to insert a line or two in those comprehensive plans, it provides the framework for elected officials to buy into the concept of zero waste most easily, and then developing a zero waste plan and the details of how to achieve it as a second step in the process works really well for many communities. There's other drivers for zero waste. Creating green jobs is a huge driver. For every 10,000 tons of material that are out there, of materials that are discarded, there's a total of one job created if you burn or bury that material. There's 4 jobs if you have that material and you compost it. If you recycle it, you have 10 times the number of jobs, and if you reuse that amount of product, there's 75 to 250 jobs. So the fact that green jobs are created is a huge driver. So zero waste is not just about diverting waste from landfills and incinerators and the environment. It's also about reinvesting those resources into the community to create good green jobs. It promotes local sustainability, assists local businesses, promotes local food and nutrients back to the soil, and protects the health of residents. So those are some of the drivers that have led to many communities around the country pursuing zero waste. I have a couple of examples of leaders in zero waste communities. San Francisco is by far the furthest along with over 80% waste diversion that they've achieved. They have been working hard on this since the early 2000 period. I believe 2002 is when they first set their goals on zero waste, and they did an interim goal of 75% by 2010. They adopted mandatory recovery of construction and demolition debris in 2006. They had added a mandatory recycling and composting ordinance requiring source separation in 2009, and now have achieved 99% compliance. The word mandatory, by the way, in other subsequent cities' use of that term have called it a universal recycling ordinance, like in Austin, Texas, or a community recycling ordinance, like in Fort Collins, Colorado. In 2012, San Francisco banned single-use plastic bags and extended that to all restaurants and stores. They extended the ban to expanded polystyrene foam styrofoam foodware and packaging in 2016, and expanded their recycling program with new materials in 2017, and then banned plastic straws and fluorinated chemicals being used on products. So San Francisco has been a leader for many years. Baltimore is one of the latest zero waste communities that we've been working with. We helped develop this fair development plan for zero waste. This is the first fair development plan for zero waste in the country, with a major emphasis on equity issues, diversity, inclusion, looking at how to take over the vacant open spaces that have been littered upon, and the vacant buildings that that landlords have held for future development and are just an eyesore for the community. They're talking about setting up a fund for community land trusts to take over that land and buildings in order to rebuild them as part of their zero waste initiatives. And the zero waste plan in Baltimore was all about closing down their incinerator. They were successful there in fighting the development of the world's largest incinerator, in addition to the one that exists. And now they're working on closing that existing incinerator down, and the zero waste plan provides a framework for them to do that. In Boston, we helped them develop a zero waste plan right before Baltimore, and they set up an advisory committee with a team of consultants that went out and saw all the different facilities, the reuse, recycling, composting facilities, and the incinerators that serve Boston currently, and came up with specific recommendations on how to focus first on reducing and reusing, then recycling more and recycling right, trying to get the quality standards up of the materials being recovered, increasing their composting, implementing a citywide collection of food and yard trimmings as part of their plan, and to inspire innovation. Boston and Palo Alto, in their updates, both have clauses about creating research and development efforts to help work between the public, private sector, and academia to figure out what are the problem materials that are having difficult times being reused, recycled, or composted. Can they be redesigned? Can the functions be serviced in another way? And can there be partnerships between public and private sector and academia in trying to figure all that out? Boston's really into innovation, and that R&D clause was a key part of their innovation ideas in the Zero Waste Boston plan. In Fort Collins, they had pursued the Zero Waste plan to try and figure out where to go beyond their 50% goal that they had by 2010. So as part of the zero waste process, we evaluated how far they were with diversion, found that they were over 50%, and that the council asked which should the new goal be. Through the Road to Zero Waste planning process, the town and stakeholders agreed with zero waste being the goal, laid out different things for being implemented for culture change, reduce and reuse, reinvesting resources, a universal recycling ordinance, which became the community recycling ordinance, C&D recycling, construction demolition materials, composting of organics, and then waste to clean energy, which they refer to as the way ZWIA does, the Zero Waste International Alliance. Basically, anaerobic digestion is what's considered clean energy because it operates at the scale of biological temperatures and pressure. and those that meet the guidelines for ZWIA being acceptable under zero waste, and product stewardship as the last component of their zero waste plan. In San Diego, I said they're one of the more recent cities adopting zero waste. They adopted a comprehensive recycling ordinance in 2008 and a construction demolition deposit program that same year. They developed their zero waste plan and a climate action plan in 2015, and most recently a polystyrene foam and single-use plastics ordinance. These are some of the key tools that they're using to move forward to achieve their zero waste goals. One of the tools to share with you all is how Zero Waste USA put together this Zero Waste Community Planning Checklist. This one's the most updated one on the zerowasteusa.org website, and it lists by sector, either for the entire community, for residential, commercial, construction demolition, or self-haul, different sectors, different policies, programs, and infrastructure that have been implemented in other communities. And what we encourage people to do is to either check off or place a yes in the column to the left of the initiatives that have been implemented in your community. The ones without those marks are opportunities for being implemented in your community to help guide you in developing a list to consider in a zero waste planning process. The ones that remain could also then be further circled to highlight that they are ones that you'd particularly be interested in pursuing or highlighted. And we find that in recent zero waste planning engagements, we work with the zero waste staff in the community to go over this, run it by the advisory process, advisory committees, or the workshops, work groups, or public meetings to get input on this. And it's a really quick way of focusing in on opportunities to be pursued on a community-wide basis for that zero waste planning effort. All of those items in the planning checklist are described in this website. This is highlighting a website at epa.gov called Managing and Transforming Waste Streams. And if you go to epa.gov and put in Transform Waste, you'll get to this real quickly. And it really provides a great tool for getting more details about each of those options for policies, programs, and infrastructure or facilities to be implemented in a community. Has 100 different options and over 350 examples of them being implemented around the United States. And you can go to those links and find links to the actual ordinances, the actual contracts, the actual legal documents that underpin them moving forward with different policies, programs, and infrastructure. These are for facilities and operations and policies and programs all over the United States for high diversion and moving towards zero waste. One of the great opportunities for zero waste is recognizing zero waste businesses and institutions. In every community we've worked in for zero waste community planning, we found that there's someone that's diverting already over 90% of their materials from landfill, incineration, and the environment. And we find them and promote them as one of the ways to highlight that it's possible in that community. One of the other options, if you don't find any at 90%, finding the leaders that are maybe at 70, 80%, helping them get to 90% diversion, and still promoting them as highlighting how much can be done in the local community if you're committed to doing just that. Unlike the the cities list, which I highlighted with the map before, um, where all they had to do to get on the list was adopt a goal or adopt a plan. These businesses that are listed here have actually achieved over 90% diversion of their discarded materials from landfills, incineration, and the environment. Um, Again, there are large companies, small companies, electronics companies, organic companies, uh, in rural areas, in urban areas. There's 2,800 businesses in Japan that have been reported by ZERI, the Zero Emissions Research and Initiatives, ZERI.org, that have already adopted zero waste as a goal, achieved um, zero to landfill, and as of 10 or 15 years ago, a third of them had already achieved 90% diversion from incineration as well. You can see that the ones that are asterisked with a red have been certified as meeting the Zero Waste International Standards that are part of the U.S. Green Building Council program called TRUE. TRUE stands for Total Resource Use and Efficiency, and the TRUE rating system is available at true.gbci.org. In addition to the system, there are examples there, written up case studies of all the many of the businesses that have been certified, documented as meeting the standards under the TRUE program. One of the things to underscore with businesses is zero waste is all about efficiency. This is a pie chart that was developed by a consultant that Gil Friend that does analysis of sustainability for businesses, and he highlighted that in this particular business, the orange, 36 of the output was related to the product, and 64% had did not relate to the product at all. And he said, and on the average, it's actually more like only 10% of all the resources they acquire are going towards the product, and 90% on average is going to waste and wasting. And that's why there's programs like lean manufacturing, factor 4, factor 10. We can be 4 times better or 10 times more efficient. It's because there's so much inefficiency in industry that zero waste helps focus businesses on getting rid of those inefficiencies. And in fact, that's where they save the most money. And every zero waste business has saved money. They save the most money by eliminating wasteful practices. They save some money through reuse systems, like Toyota saved $1 billion over 10 years by going to a reusable shipping container for parts to manufacture their cars in America. And they save some with recycling and composting if the local rates are structured correctly to provide those types of incentives like are done in San Francisco and other zero waste communities. Zero waste also reduces liability under the Superfund law in the U.S., CERCLA, CERCLA law. Businesses are liable for hazards that they produce and toxics that are leached out of landfills, for example. And when a landfill leaks, and the regulators come in, they bring in the engineers, the accountants, and the lawyers. They tally up how many tons were provided by which sources, and then they send a bill for those sources of materials that went into the landfill for them to pay their share of the liability for cleaning up that mess. So zero waste helps reduce that liability. That gets the attention of CEOs and chief financial officers for many companies, particularly the larger the companies, the more they're interested in that. We talked about efficiency. It reduces greenhouse gas gas emissions. It provides a marketing edge to sell their products, um, saves energy, creates clean energy. 3 to 5 times more energy can be saved through zero waste practices than can be produced from burning that in an incinerator. And an incinerator, we mean anything over 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Any thermal systems is considered an incinerator by the Zero Waste International Alliance. And the only clean energy is things that are less than 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which is basically anaerobic digestion. The other reason for doing this is it's the right thing to do, and it helps to clean up the plastics that are going into the environment, into the oceans, into the wild areas of our countries. Those are all benefits that have been drivers to get businesses to pursue zero waste. Mentioned that businesses save money by eliminating wasteful practices. They save the most there, then reuse systems, and then recycling and composting. A couple of examples of businesses. RICO was one of the early leaders, highlighted by the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, and they didn't throw away anything since 2001. Was a great early success story. Vons Safeway, a major grocer on the West Coast, was an early leader in the 1990s and early 2000. Here they were highlighted that the less fortunate fruits and vegetables that weren't selected by customers were shrink wrapped and backhauled to central distribution on the same trucks that brought the original produce to the stores. And then at central distribution, they ship it over to a composting system where those materials are composted. Sierra Nevada was the first company in the world certified by the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, now the True GBCI program, True Zero Waste Rating System of U.S. Green Building Council. Sierra Nevada was certified at 99.8% diversion from landfills, incineration, and the environment. Chu Hall at UC Berkeley is a more recent example. In 2018, they achieved platinum certification under the True system for 95% diversion. It's a major facility at their business school at UC Berkeley, the Haas Business School. Cost $60 million, 80,000 square feet, and they have no public area trash bins. The message they give is pack it in, pack it out. They're trying to get people who use the facility, that's students, faculty, other users, to think about what they're doing and not to waste things in the facility. There's many pictures here showing the different recycling bins throughout, the reusables and the flatware and in the beverage containers, and even a collection for energy bar wrappers is on the left at the bottom, which goes to TerraCycle. They have no bins in classrooms or study rooms, so they've done a lot of great things. On the top right is reusable containers for their catering services that cater their operations there. So it's a great example, again, one worth looking at true.gbci.org. Key steps to achieving zero waste for businesses and institutions is making the commitment, figuring out what's being discarded, identifying what opportunities are missing, like composting or C&D recycling, or often things, more opportunities for reuse are, and particularly edible food is a huge opportunity at many locations. And then putting that all together in a zero waste plan that evaluates options to address those service needs and opportunities, getting buy-in from the different departments, top management is key to moving forward, implementing the program, and then continuously improving that over time. The goal of both communities and businesses is to create a zero waste economy together with clean production, retail stores educating consumers and taking back products, consumers, both residents and businesses using their buying power to create market demand and a new standard for manufacturing, producers being responsible in taking back their own products and supporting recovery infrastructure, resource recovery parks where in the community they co-locate reuse, recycling, and composting facilities, often near landfills or transfer stations, is happening naturally, so designing for that, creating lots of jobs, on the order of 250 times more jobs for reuse and other benefits for composting and recycling. Zero wasters are not satisfied with the rules as they are. They're all about changing the rules to removing barriers and inequities to support sustainability, shifting the subsidies to stimulate green practice rather than favoring waste and pollution, and designing for the environment, not the dump. I always close my presentations with, if you're not for zero waste, how much waste are you for? And you get to tell me in an email. My email's there, gary@garylist.com. Details are available at zerowasteusa.org on these programs and lots of other training that we provide through Zero Waste USA. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. That's the end of my presentation.
Our next speaker will be Dorte Ray. She is the Executive Officer of the New Zealand Zero Waste Network, whose mission is to connect, educate, enable, and inspire its members and be a unifying voice at the local, regional, and central government level. She has worked in the resource recovery sector for over 10 years and is currently studying for her master's degree in environmental management. Please welcome Dorte Ray.
Kia ora koutou. Hello, my name's Dorte Ray. I'm from the Zero Waste Network, Aotearoa, which is in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Today, I'm just going to be giving you some quick information about the Zero Waste Network and what we do. It'll come in a few slides. And yeah, it's a huge pleasure to be part of this conference and to share some information about what's been happening where I am. So I'm going to cover a bit about the Zero Waste Network and what our members do, and also talk about some of the key issues that we see happening in Aotearoa in regards to resource recovery, and also going to share a little bit about how we're thinking about the shift to a circular economy. So first, I'm going to introduce myself. So my name's Dorte Ray, and I live on Waiheke Island, which is about 35 minutes from Auckland, which is New Zealand's biggest city. There's about 1.4 million people in Auckland, and I live on an island with about 10,000 people. So I was born here, and I worked in the waste sector for about the last 12 years. So this picture is an article that was put in the local paper when I got a job as the social enterprise intern for the not-for-profit organisation that was running Waiheke's Resource Recovery Centre and transfer station. And what I especially like about this picture with this, even though it's got a slightly embarrassing heading, was that the community was so engaged in its waste and resource story that somebody getting a job at the local tip made it into the paper. So I started doing all sorts of things at that centre, including sorting rubbish and working in the reuse shop, some waste audits, waste education. And then about 8 years ago, I got a job for the Zero Waste Network. So now I'll just give a bit of context about Aotearoa, New Zealand. So we're a small country. We've got a population of about 5 million people. And we, despite being small, we also produce a lot of rubbish. So there's about 740 kgs disposed to landfill each year per person, and that comes to a total of 3.6 million tonnes annually. And the really scary thing is that that's increasing massively. So a 48% increase in the last 10 years. One of the big issues that we have here is that our waste data is really limited, and that's a big focus that we think needs to happen, because we know that the numbers are big, but we don't have heaps of data about what it is exactly and how we can change it. So we do have substantial waste infrastructure in place, kind of rurally and in the cities as well. So you can generally access waste infrastructure in terms of putting out rubbish at the curbside, or being able to access drop-off points. But in general, we have got a really strong reliance on offshore solutions. So we send a lot of our waste commodities, our resource commodities, overseas. And that has been really problematic in the last few years, which is probably true for many places. But it really, the realization that we need to do things differently has been a really important part in increasing public engagement in waste issues, and also in the government and the waste industry, being keen to focus on developing better circular solutions for our resources. So the key piece of legislation in New Zealand is the Waste Minimisation Act 2008. It does a bunch of things. It requires council waste minimisation and management plans to be developed, and then a survey kind of done every 6 years on how those councils are achieving those waste plans. And then they need to be updated every 6 years as well. It introduced a waste disposal levy, and it's very low. So it's kind of, compared to other countries kind of nearby, Australia, for instance, it's very low. It's currently just $10 a tonne. But there is kind of movement towards that increasing, which is really good. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. The Waste Minimisation Act also established a contestable fund called the Waste Minimisation Fund, and that is one of the key sources of funding for organisations that I work with, and kind of the waste sector generally. It also made provision for mandatory product stewardship, and I'll talk a bit more about that. We think that's one of the key pieces of a circular economy. The next slide is just really a picture of the like visualizing the country's waste sector. We do have some engagement with international conventions, which is the outside ring. The key kind of regulatory body is the Ministry for the Environment, and then significant responsibility sits with local councils. So they are generally the ones responsible for the collections and bylaws and running the management of sites. But there are various other organisations that provide services. So there's a significant corporate sector, which is made up of big international companies, and also New Zealand-owned companies. And then we also have a thriving community resource recovery sector, who I represent today. So the community resource recovery sector are community-based organisations that are concerned with waste reduction, reuse and recycling, and they deliver services and educational and campaigning activities on waste issues. So that's who I'm going to talk a bit more about now. So this is the organisation I work for, the Zero Waste Network Aotearoa. We've been sharing what we know about running resource recovery enterprises with each other since about 1989, the first one was developed. The Zero Waste Network was formally established in 2006. We used to be the Community Recycling Network. And we changed our name in 2018 to better reflect what we thought was important. Currently, we have 100 more than 100 members. Those are made up of community organisations, which is the biggest part of our membership, probably 50 to 60 community organisations. And then we also have associate members who are either councils or businesses. So in 2019, those community organisations members, they diverted 30,000 tonnes of materials. They employed a substantial number of people, so there were 707 jobs, and the full-time equivalent comes to 460 full-time jobs, and they turned over $300 million. So it's not they're spread kind of the width and breadth of the islands, and it's, yeah, collectively they have a bit of an impact. So I'm just gonna, the next 3 slides just kind of talk about what our members do, and I've kind of put them into the waste hierarchy. So some of the more important activities are around reduction. Lots of education activities are undertaken by our members. They also do things like waste audits and have people come and visit their sites. Then they also do some reuse activities, so both going out and collecting reusable items and also running places where people can drop their items off. There are a bunch of redistribution projects where it's not necessarily about selling those reusable items, but about giving them to people who need them. And then there are a significant number of reuse shops, which are always really cool places to go visit. Finally, there are a bunch of recycling activities that are undertaken. They are often hand sorting, and so the focus is really on producing high quality feedstock, and trying to send things onshore to be recovered as much as possible. Some of the really important waste streams that we've been focusing are e-waste, electronic waste, and kind of pulling that apart before it gets sent away, and also organic waste collections and composting. So our mission as the Zero Waste Network is to connect, educate, enable and inspire our members to reach their zero waste goals and to be a unifying voice at local, regional and central government levels. The following slides are going to just illustrate some of the work the Zero Waste Network does to support our members. So we do some training. We've got 2 training courses at the moment, and are always kind of interested in developing more. So the ones we have currently are an introduction to resource recovery, and the second one is the resource recovery management training. So we developed these with a focus on people running sites, and the introduction was really a much broader kind of people who are just starting out in the sector or who are interested in the sector, and trying to tie the different pieces of the recovery chain together in our training, whereas the management training is much more for people who are working in higher levels of management, and a big focus is really about developing some kind of peer networking, and talking about, you know, it's quite good for people at a governance level as well, to try and understand the kind of key operational aspects of a resource recovery enterprise, which tend to have aspects of a business, but there's also some really important trying to achieve a mission, because they're mostly not-for-profit organisations, and how you tie those 2 things together. Another set of projects we do is really about networking. So we have a bunch of annual events, sometimes in person, and last year for the first time we did our Zero Waste World Summit, which was a digital event, and was really great for connecting with people outside of New Zealand. Yeah, it's a really wonderful time to come and talk about people who are equally excited about waste as you, and we've also been working with a bunch of other community enterprise focused organisations. So Environment Hubs Aotearoa are a network of environment centres, and the Community Energy Network are a bunch of community energy providers. So some of the topics are waste focused, but often it's more about the community enterprise model. Just continuing on with our networking events, we also have some funding to run these closing the loop circular economy events. So that is really trying to increase the conversation around what a circular economy looks like, and kind of connecting the dots between different parts of the supply and recovery chain together across New Zealand. Then we have a reuse project ourselves. This is based in Auckland. There is a collection that happens run by the council where like hard rubbish items, furniture, e-waste, that kind of stuff is collected once a year from households, and it comes back to a central site. And the Zero Waste Network's job is to redistribute those items for free. So we basically have a warehouse, and community groups come in and collect stuff, and often take those back to their own resource recovery enterprises, and particularly reuse shops. In 2019, we decided we needed to respond to the increasing number of proposals for municipal waste incineration happening here. So we currently do not have any municipal waste to energy projects in New Zealand, and we believe that those projects are against zero waste principles. So we've been working with a number of concerned communities around the country to promote circular zero waste solutions instead of these waste to energy solutions, and this is our Regeneration Not Incineration campaign. We've just like recently connected with the ZWIA network, which has been really, really useful as well. So this slide kind of indicates some of the important things going on in the country. One of the things we do is to develop positions on policy and to encourage our members and other stakeholders to get involved in policy processes. These are some of the kind of key issues that have happened over the last couple of years. So the waste levy increase, I mentioned before, it's currently $10 a tonne, and the government recently consulted on whether that should go up, and we obviously thought it should, and it will go up. So it's going to go up, I think, to $60 by 2025, and that will have a significant increase in the amount of funding available through the Waste Minimisation Fund, and the amount of money available to invest in resource recovery. And so we are still kind of working quite hard on trying to get the increased investment to create a circular economy and to go along waste hierarchy lines. Then product stewardship. So the Waste Minimisation Act had made provision for product stewardship, mandatory product stewardship, but until now we've relied on voluntary schemes. There were a number of them, but they were quite small scale. So last year the government finally announced that there would be a bunch of mandatory schemes in place. They would be developed. And so those were on plastic packaging, tyres, e-waste, agrochemicals in their containers, refrigerants, and also farm plastics. And the Zero Waste Network and its members have been really involved with a bunch of those projects, the development of those product stewardship schemes. And we really believe that this is a cornerstone policy for achieving zero waste. Then there is the waste strategy. So currently the government is updating its waste strategy. The last one was done in 2010. And amongst other things, we are advocating firmly that the strategy and the investment plan need to follow the waste hierarchy and invest in reduction and reuse, as well as recycling, because recycling definitely has been getting the majority of the funding and attention, and to create a zero waste circular economy. We know that we really need to increase investment in reduction and also reuse infrastructure. And then there's a big issue of climate change. So our government has put together a climate change commission to look at how we can reduce our emissions, and their report was just released a couple of weeks ago. So we are currently working on trying to feed into that process. The picture here represents a thing that happened a couple of years ago. There is a river in the South Island. There was a big rainfall event, and the river pushed down a landfill down the river and across hundreds of kilometres of the beach. So we know that there are a significant number of these kinds of landfills across the country, and believe that climate change and weather events are really going to have an impact on what we were doing in the past, but there's also what we need to do in the future. So we believe that the Climate Change Commission recommendations around waste really need to include the consumption-based emissions, and not just focus on the biogenic methane that comes from landfills. So it's a very complex issue, which I know is probably true all around the world, but this is what it looks like here. Okay, so now I'm just going to move on really quickly to some of our thinking around the circular economy and zero waste. So there is an old model, and that was, we saw a pile of waste and thought of it as something to get rid of. And the question was really, should we burn it or bury it? Those both seem like valid options. We think the circular economy asks a new question: how do we keep raw materials and embodied energy in the economy for longer? And it starts to not become a conversation about burning or burying, but about what else is possible. We really like the kind of cradle to cradle kind of two pathways of a technical stream and a biological stream, and are finding those really useful in our thinking. That's represents that. And then finally, we've been, in thinking about this stuff, we've been thinking about how do we create the shift to a circular economy, and have been really inspired by some thinking around levers. And I think Danella Meadows, I've listed an article there that talks about this also. But we think that creating a shift to a circular economy is really going to need a whole bunch of different levers to be pressed. And we've summarised them into 4 parts. So activities and infrastructure, processes and flows, the regulatory environment framework, or the kind of rules of the game, and then mindset. So they are all important, but what we've noticed is that even within the Zero Waste Network, we've probably been really focused at the activities and infrastructure, building sites, rubbish collections, what people go and do with their can once they're finished with it. But actually, we've been thinking that the mindset is probably the most effective lever, and really creating a culture of resource and not waste is really important. And we do definitely need all of these things, but I think my final slide is really about what we believe is a really important kind of thing to live by, and that's what the Zero Waste Network does, and that's around engaging communities and working from the bottom up to change hearts and minds. providing accessible options to live in the circular economy in your local community is really important, and it allows you to kind of value the resources we have. So that is my presentation finished. And if you have any questions, I would be very happy to answer them.